My name is Tisha, and I am the founder of Clean Fight Club. Today, I'm going to be doing a tutorial about how you can sew your own American fighter's flag out of silk, cotton, or whatever you want to make it out of. But personally, I find silk to be the best material to make a ring flag out of. It really catches the light as the fighter walks in, and it's special. If you're going to wear it into the ring, it might as well be special, right? So my hope is that at the end of this tutorial, you will see how time intensive it is to make a flag like this, ergo expensive, and you'll have a better idea of what it takes to make a Betsy Ross style ring flag like this. So without further ado, here's how you do it. Alright guys, so as you can see here, this is my personal flag. This is one that I use in all of my photo shoots. As you can see, the colors that I like to use in my American flags are very deep. I like almost a burgundy red. I like almost a navy blue. I like the white to be very creamy, so the flag almost has like a tea look. So this time, for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a silk shantung. You'll need a yard of the blue. You'll need 2 3/4 yards of the white. You'll need 2 1/4 yards of the red. Other things you'll need to know is you'll need to go online to www.ushistory.org/Betsy. That will take you to a page all about the American flag and Betsy Ross and how it was made, the history of it. But it also has all of the proportions, the correct proportions for an American flag. Now, since this is not an official flag, the proportions can be slightly off, but if you actually want to fly it for governmental purposes or whatever, you'd be able to do the math and get the specs exactly right. So all the flags that I make are 4x6, so they're pretty big and substantial, so you could really wrap that around the fighter, or when they come in, it flies really nicely. So that's the size I'm going to be making today. But like I said, you can make any size that you like, and those specs will be on that website. The other things that you're going to need are, you are going to need some a fusible product, so you can cut out your stars and be able to fuse those onto the blue union, so that when you sew it, they don't move around. And trust me, you want to use a fusible. So this one's heat and bonded. You could use any brand you want. I also use a product called Steam-A-Seam. I use the 1/4 inch version, and I use that to help really keep the lines of the white and red stripes nice and straight and actually strong, especially if you're going to really fly this flag. It's better to have it nice and strong. The other thing you're going to need, if you're going to fly it, you're going to need to put in some grommets. So you'll need grommets, you'll need a grommet setter, and you will also need a cotton webbing to put on the edge of the flag. Yeah, that's about what you need to get going. You'll also need all your sewing notions, like a sewing machine and thread and scissors and needles, stuff like that. So once you have all that, then we're going to just get started. So as you'll remember, I bought 2 3/4 yards of the white fabric, and so 2 1/4 yards are going to be needed for these stripes. So I'm just going to cut off about a 1/2 yard of this to use for my stars. So, just pick an end here, and let's cut that up and start some stars. Use half yard, and I like to cut about like about 110 stars. Don't forget you need stars on the front and the back of your flag. That's part of why it takes so long. So I'm gonna use this half yard of fabric to cut those stars out of. Before fusing the paper onto the fabric, make sure you turn off your steam function on the iron. The paper needs to be fused on with a dry iron. So just fuse that paper onto the silk and you'll be ready to draw. Okay, so here we are. I have my half yard of silk fabric that has been bonded or fused onto the fusible paper. So I'll be able to draw those stars on top of it. So next what you're going to have to do is make the pattern piece for your star. And so as I mentioned to you before, on that website, ushistory.org/Betsy, there's all the proper specifications of the US flag. So as soon as you know how big you want to make that flag, then the hoist always has the factor of 1, so you just multiply all the other aspects of the flag by that. So in my case, it's a 4x6 flag, so the hoist is 48 inches, and I multiply that by the diameter of the star here, which they have listed as pattern piece K, which should be multiplying by 0.0616, so I get 2.9568. And as you can see, I have my star here. This pattern piece has lasted for about a year right now. So I just make, when I made my star, I made it just a little bit smaller, because when I trace around it a number of times, the star just, gets that much bigger. And so it seems like when I made the star slightly more than 2 3/4, and it kind of made that perfect size for me. And so when you make your pattern piece of the star, you want to make sure and put an arrow at the top of the star, at the top of the 5-pointed star. As you trace the stars, you really want to make sure the top point of the star is always facing the edge of the selvage. So this arrow at the top of the star will ensure that all the stars have the same grain as the rest of the flag, and you won't get in trouble with having your star shift as you're drawing these down. So let me get up and put the camera on time lapse so you can see how long it takes to draw all this stuff. Oh, after you make your pattern piece. Like I said, ushistory.org/Betsy. Do your math first, make all your pattern pieces, know exactly how much fabric you need. That's it. Let's get going. So as you can see, we have all the stars drawn out, so I just have to cut them out. As you can see, when I was drawing them out, just like on my pattern piece, I drew a little tick at the top of each star, so I know when I place that star exactly where the top of that 5-headed star is, so none of them get cattywampus as you're laying them out. So let's cut those out. everybody, I am back from Muay Thai and I am ready to put my stars on the blue union of my flag. So what you're going to want to do is make yourself a pattern off of that website I keep talking about, www.ushistory.org/Betsy, and look at those specifications again. So here's one that I made a while back, and so basically what you would do is just transfer these lines once you get them perfect to your blue fabric, and then you would set your stars down on those lines. So here's an example of how you can lay your stars. You take your star paper, take off the paper backer, holding that top of the star so it doesn't get lost. Here's one that I did out of China silk. I haven't quite finished this flag yet. So you see all the tips of the stars are all facing the top. That's why you really want to draw that for yourself or mark that for yourself. So all the top of the 5-pointed star is pointing north. As I said before, this is one that I'm in the middle of making right now. So I've already put these stars on one side and then transferred them to the other side and ironed them down, and then sewed around each star. Now, how do you get this exactly on top of each other so that when you zigzag, it's not all over the place? I'll tell you what I did the first time. So the way that you could do it is you have to make your pattern, place all your stars first, iron those stars down very good. And then after it's ironed down, what you need to do is go find a large window with direct sunlight coming through. Then you put your union taped onto the window so that the sun is shining through it. You can see where your ironed on stars are, and then draw in chalk exactly where all of your stars are. Take it down, put all the rest of your stars on, iron them on the opposite side, and then you're able to sew it, if that makes any sense. So I've done that with direct sunlight. I've done that before in a bathroom that had a big shower door with the light inside the shower, and I was able to shut off all the other lights in the bathroom except for the light in the shower, and then I could see the stars and trace it out. It's pretty hard to do, so I've developed a different way to do it, but it's only worth doing if you're going to make more than 3 flags because it is constructing yourself a light box. And so that is right here. This is what I'm currently using to set my stars. And so basically you build yourself a light box, and then when it's plugged in, what you're able to do is you're able to place your blue union fabric over the light box. You can see your lines coming through like I have here. You're able to set your stars exactly on the lines where they are supposed to go. Do all 50 stars. And then I've made this with a glass topper. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to take the iron down all 50 stars, and then turn it over. When I turn it over, I'm able to see exactly where all those stars are, and I'm able to place a star right on top of that one and iron them all down again, thus making all of the stars exactly one on top of the other before I sew it all together. So this right here, building a light box, it works great, but like I said, unless you're going to keep making these, it's not practical really to do something like that. So you kind of have to be a little improvisational about how you're going to find your back stars on top of the ones that you start with. So with that being said, I'm going to start writing down all these stars. And draw the stars, an hour and 57 minutes to cut out the stars, and 2 hours and 5 minutes to place and iron all those stars. Now we're going to sew the stars down. I'll be using my Husky to sew this. It's not a super duper high-end machine, but it does the trick. And there's our stars we're going to sew. I have all my bobbins all wound. Scissors ready to go, so everything's set up and ready to go. Let's sew these stars down. Okay, so a couple things to remember when you're sewing this is that if you start sewing and then come back, you want to continue sewing on the same side. So you have to decide which side is going to be the correct side, or the side that you want prominently displayed, because no matter how careful you are, the stars, because they're hand cut, they don't match each other exactly all the time. So there might be a little play on either side, but on one side of this, it's going to look absolutely perfect, and on the other side, it might just look like there's a couple places a little tiny bit off. So I'm going to decide that this is my proper side. And I'm going to start on the top left hand star. And so there is one star. Done. 50 billion to go. All right, 50 to go. It's off so y'all can have a look at that. All right. Here is star. And then the back side. It's not too shabby. But that's the way I like mine to look, with that zigzag around it. If you like, you could do a satin stitch if you have a super fancy machine. That'll do that. I guess this one technically will do a satin stitch, but I just, I like the zigzag. I don't know, because just looking at older flags, it just kind of has that vintage look. That's how they were constructed, so that's kind of how I like to make mine. So here we have our sewn union, and it's been given a rough iron. As you can see, it's zigzagged. Round, front, moving on the back. So that's done, and as we see on this board, it took 3 hours and 27 minutes to sew and iron those stars. Totally worth it. So make sure and do the associated math for the size of flag you are making for pattern piece L, as shown at www.ushistory.org/Etsy. Make yourself a pattern piece for your stripes, including a 3/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. I find a nice big see-through ruler also works well if you have one of those. Just lay out a piece of tape on the ruler to use as an edge guide for the fabric. When I cut my stripes, I like to make them a couple inches longer in length so I can square them up nicely after the stripes are all sewn together. I also add 1/4 inch to the width of the red stripes on the top and bottom fly of the flag. This will give me a little more fabric to make a nice thick hem on the top and bottom of the fly when the flag is complete. And so there we are. To draw and cut the stripes was 58 minutes, and now we're going to sew those stripes. All right, so that was kind of a long day of sewing so far, but that's okay. I sat a lot, so I went to Muay Thai, and now I'm ready to go sew my stripes together because they're all cut out. So first what I do is I'm going to sew the bottom stripes together, and then I'll sew the top stripes together, and then I'll put the top stripes on the union, and then I'll connect it all together. So what else do I need to tell you? Oh, so you're going to be seeing me change the thread a lot. Why do I do that? Because we're making a really cool flag, right? So I like to sew this couture style. So we're going to be changing out the thread depending on what color we're sewing, right? So that when you're done, you don't see a bunch of white top stitching everywhere. When you're done is you're going to see white thread on white fabric, red thread on red fabric. Turn it over. There's blue stitching on blue fabric. You get the idea. So you want to have a lot of bobbin ready to go. in all different colors because you're gonna be switching that back and forth. So I'll put it on time lapse and you'll see it all come together.
In the top left-hand corner, you are seeing me demonstrate a basic flat felled seam, which is what's used to sew together all of the white and red stripes. So basically you sew that together and give it a good press open. And then depending on what's on top, the white or the red, you're going to trim out the bottom color to 1/4 of an inch. Then after I have that all trimmed out of there, I'm going to use my 1/4 inch steam-a-seam that I was talking about before. First, I'm going to take the top fabric, I'm going to fold it over, press it again. I'm going to shave off all the little whiskers and then I'm going to fold it in half, press it again, and I'm going to put that 1/4 inch steam-a-seam on there. Give that a little press down and then I peel off the paper backing. And then I press it down one more time. It just makes the seam super strong for flying and it makes it look really tidy. So there I am, just giving that a little top stitch and ironing again.
Okay, so far we've done all this. And then late last night we sewed the stripes together. That was 4 hours and 26 minutes. And now we're going to attach the union stripes. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to the next step. We are going to attach the stripes onto the union of stars. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square up my union. Whenever you embroider the stars onto the union, you're moving it around quite a bit. So there is a lot of fraying on the edges. So I always cut my blue a little bit bigger so that I could just square it up after and not worry about it. I just really jam in those stars and do it quickly. Although quickly is relative depending on what kind of sewer you are. Not the best. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to square up this union. I'm going to square up the edge of my stripe that will be sewn onto the union. I'm going to sew both of those together, and then I'm going to make that seam nice, changing thread as I talked about earlier, depending on what color I'm sewing. And it will be super fun and done.
Wanted to take a second to show the union being sewn onto these stripes, a little close-up of that. So the under part, the flat felled seam is the blue bobbin, and you need to change the red and white thread as you're sewing the top stitching down. So I just sew all the whites and then I change it, and now I'm just sewing all of the reds, and then that blue bobbin stays consistent on the underside of that.
All right, so now as we can see, we've done all this. We've attached the union and the stripes. That was 3 hours and 46 minutes. Now it's time to bind, grommet, and label. Okay, so we did it. Everything is sewn together and top stitched. We've changed all the thread. It looks amazing. And so now we just have to bind the edging of this bad boy. So I have my cotton webbing here, and I'm just gonna bind this edge and throw in some grommets. I don't really have any tips about this necessarily. I just try to make it look as nice as possible, so we'll see how it goes. I am going to use some fusible product on this to help keep it nice and straight while I do this, and that's it. So here we go. So a million apologies. Somehow the video got shut off when I was doing this last bit, but I'll see if I can't back up a little bit for you. So basically all I did is I used this heat and bond to help me place this exactly on the edge here. This is not quite ironed down right there, so you could see the flag is between, it's kind of sandwiched between two layers of this webbing. So I'm just in the middle of heating this down. It's like I was just saying, it does take a second because this cotton webbing is thick, and so it takes a minute for the heat to get down through it. So that's what it looks like. That's in there. And then I started it at the top, wrong side corner of my union, and I am just putting just a little bit more of this heat and bond on the little bit that's going to come down, and I'll top stitch this right here. Sometimes I use fray check, but I don't think I really need to. Not this stuff. So that's on there. So now I just finish heat setting all this down.
I placed the edge of the grommet about 3/4 of an inch away from the top and bottom edge of the cotton webbing, and 1/4 of an inch away from each side. Next, I just traced the inside of the grommet so I could see where to cut the hole. So right about here, I realized that I lost my fabric hole punch on the last TV show I was working on. So I just started working those holes out all old school style with a seam ripper and some scissors. Not ideal, but it'll do the trick. After the holes are made, find a clean piece of concrete and tap those grommets in. Pay special attention to make sure that the male side of the grommet is inserted into the right side of the flag, just to make it look a little bit prettier. And that's about it. I just iron on my brand label, and then I give the flag one more check for any missed clipped threads or any skipped stitches, and then I give that one last good press.
So here we go.
All that time right there, baby. And then to the end, total time 18 hours and 10 minutes. What? Wow. 18 hours plus to hand cut and sew a silk American flag. Making a flag like this is truly a labor of love. The flag that I was making for this tutorial was constructed as a giveaway for my Facebook business account at Clean Fight Club, and it was won by a Muay Thai fighter named Kevin Iritano. Please remember that your first time making a flag, it's probably going to take even a little bit longer than that, especially depending on how you decide to match up those stars on the union. And don't forget, there is all the pattern making, the associated math. That all takes a minute too, so I'm not gonna lie, there's some extra time in there for your first time. You want to add that in. Try to remember while you're making this thing and the hours are going on and on and on, that it's worth it. Making a silk, hand-cut, hand-sewn flag like this, it's so worth it. Even if it's not for a fancy boxer or a cage fighter, even if it's just for your family, it's a family heirloom, or it's a family heirloom for the person you're making it for. And the flag, it will always be, and it will always have a piece of you in it, and that, a piece of your aspirations and hopes and dreams for our country. And that'll be passed on to generations to come. One final tip, make sure that you always keep fabric scraps from the flags that you make. Flags, no matter what they're made from, but especially silk, they will always eventually succumb to the elements outside if you fly them. So you're going to want to patch your flag at some point, right? And as you can see, this is my flag, and it is well loved. It's been well flown, and it has been well patched a lot. I was just noticing I have another place I need to patch it from what happened last week on the sailboat. But that's okay. It was a good memory, and it'll have another good patch memory too. I'm going to patch this thing all the way up to the binding if I have to. I'm never getting rid of this flag. And so I hope you enjoy your flag. I hope you enjoy watching this tutorial. And if you can, if you want to, if you like fighting, you can check out my website, www.cleanfightclub.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Clean Fight Club. You can like and follow me there. And thank you so much for watching this tutorial, and enjoy making your flag. I promise you it will be worth it.